Ambassador, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Ambassador, what are your thoughts on the new political dispensation in Zimbabwe?
Thank you for that. We are excited about the possibilities it gives the Zimbabwean people to achieve true democracy according to your 2013 Constitution. More importantly, our excitement masks the excitement that we have seen over the last few weeks as people have tried to embrace true democracy.
So you believe it was lawfully achieved?
According to whose law? Your Constitution?
According to our law, and...
Yeah. I can't interpret your law.
Yeah.
I will say that however it was achieved, it was something that the Zimbabwean people wanted. It was past due, and my country joins the international community in looking forward and hoping that free and fair elections are held, that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission adheres to your Constitution, that BVR is done in accordance with your Constitution.
So I'm getting you supporting the new Zimbabwean leadership then?
Well, we wish President Mnangagwa well. He hasn't appointed anyone to the best of our knowledge yet, so we have to take a wait and see.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on him in particular, the new president?
On President Mnangagwa,
yeah.
You know, I've only had the opportunity to meet him once in my nearly 2 years here, so I would hope to have the opportunity to engage with him in the future to get an assessment. The important thing is not what I think of him. The important thing is what the Zimbabwean people, the Zimbabwean voters think of him. And I would want to hear what he would want from my country as we go forward, how he envisions his administration partnering with my nation as well as the global community.
In your view, Ambassador, what happened in Zimbabwe was not a coup?
Well, it was a military intervention, clearly.
Not a coup.
It was a military intervention, clearly. And what we would like to see is the troops return to the barracks. We would like to see democracy flourish. And we were very pleased that this was done in almost, not 100%, in a nonviolent manner.
Ambassador, what are we likely to see happening between Zimbabwe and the US? Is there likely to be a major policy shift, perhaps in the short term?
Well, we have to see what, let's be fair. Let's give President Mnangagwa a chance to tell the world community what he would like to do, to speak with ambassadors, especially my colleagues from all over the world, and say, what does he want to do? We listened to his speech at the inauguration. It was inspiring. We want to see laid down the plan. I think the budget will be next week. I don't know if the acting finance minister will deliver it, but that will be the first sign to the international community of where this Zimbabwe is going to go on finance, trade, and investment.
So basically there has to be some tangible results before you get involved.
Well, we are already involved. You know, we're the largest bilateral donor. We give over $250 million to this country. We're the largest donor to the Global Fund to help combat HIV/AIDS. We're the largest donor to the United Nations. We're building a brand new embassy that costs another $200 million and employs 700 million Zimbabweans. We've been the largest donor ever since 1980, and we continue to be.
Yes, but you haven't been actively involved in the economy itself.
Well,
so are we likely to see that change within you?
Thank you for that, but I would respectfully disagree. When you're building a new embassy, you're employing 700 Zimbabweans every day. When you source the bricks, the floors from here, when the third country nationals who are working in our new embassy are staying at your lodges and your hotels, when Americans are the largest tourists by far, over 50,000 Americans to Vic Falls every year. I think we're very involved in the economy, and our wonderful Zimbabwean employees, over 250 that work in our embassy, they contribute to the economy.
True
also.
that, Ambassador, but clearly America can do much better.
In what way?
You're the superpower.
In what way?
In terms of investment.
Well, you know, we don't have government investment. We have private sector investment. And Pepsi-Cola is about to open here. That's a very large American company. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah,
It's
it is.
not?
Yeah.
You don't like
It is
Pepsi
something,
then?
no, of course we do, and we appreciate investment, obviously. But my question is, are we likely to see more investment with the new?
You know, that's not up to the government.
But is the government likely to be encouraging?
Well, that is up to the private sector.
Yeah.
And the private sector makes decisions.
And the tech is cue from the government?
Not in the United States, no. No. Maybe in other countries of the world. American business persons make decisions based on the economic realities in the country.
But your foreign policy influences what the private sector does, though, doesn't it? Any country's foreign policy will influence that.
I think what influences them, business persons, can they make money? Are the courts fair? Can they get their money out? Will their properties be taken over? Can they own 100%, 70, 80, 90%? That is what influences. Now, why we are optimistic about Zimbabwe is because I've served in India, I served in Bangladesh, or Philippines, who saw their economies turn around in a rapid manner. I visited Cambodia numerous times, and they were far in the depths compared to Zimbabwe, and they've turned around. And look at Rwanda under President Kagame, how they've turned their economy around. And why did the world come? Not because an ambassador said yes or no, but because the conditions on the ground were right. And that is up to President Kagame to set.
Yeah. Fair enough, Ambassador. There are some who have suggested that the West has for long been obsessed with getting former President Mugabe out of power and not the state of Zimbabwe per se. Would you say it was about the men or the country?
I would say we have always wanted the best for the Zimbabwean people. If you look at the President's emergency program for AIDS relief, it began under President Bush and increased under President Obama and President Trump. When that started, there were 25% of Zimbabweans were HIV positive. Now it's under 12%. That is, if that doesn't show concern for the average person, I don't know what can.
Does America have a post-Mugabe policy, for example?
Well, we would very much like to partner with this administration, but we have to see where they're going to go. And to be fair, I can't comment because President Mugabe has only been in office under a week, and we have to see what he wants to do.
You spoke about the embassy that you are building in Harare. It's the biggest, it's going to be your biggest in Africa.
No.
It's not?
No, it's not.
Okay. Why that much investment, though?
Because we're committed to the Zimbabwean people.
Or is that the reason? Or
what else would you think? Look, our embassy is in several locations. We have to consolidate into one. That's efficient economics. But if you look at the wall, that's a tribute to Great Zimbabwe. All that's going to be, that curved wall, it's a copy of Great Zimbabwe. You're going to see Shona sculpture, the chancery where I will work. The Imbera will be an overhang. Again, tribute to Zimbabwean culture. But it's not the largest embassy in Africa. When you look at that, that's Cairo, Abuja, Nairobi, Addis. They have far larger populations too.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what is incredible though? Yeah. Our young African leaders, Zimbabwe always is among the top in applications per capita and in scholarships. In such a small population pool to draw from.
It has the highest literacy rate in Africa, remember?
You know, we're so pleased. We had 3 Rhodes Scholars from American universities last year, including from Arizona State, where I taught. So proud to see that. 1,500 Zimbabweans studying in the United States, mostly on scholarships from American universities. You know, Mr. Masiwa has been very generous to Yale and Morehouse. James Manyika has established a fellowship at Harvard for Zimbabweans. Patina Gapal went last year as the first. So I see Zimbabweans excelling in American universities, and we're proud they contribute to our fabric. I hope the economic conditions will be such that many would want to return home.
Coming back to Zimbabwean politics, Ambassador, there are claims that former Finance Minister Ignatius Chombo approached you over his bid to succeed then President Robert Mugabe.
Mr.
Is there truth in that?
Approach me?
There are reports that you met up with them and the issue was discussed.
I only met Mr. Chumbo once in my life, and that was in his office when he was the home minister. But it was an important meeting because we met to talk about trafficking in persons. And to his credit and to the permanent secretary and his legal department's credit, they worked very closely with us to combat this modern day form of slavery. And Zimbabwe's ranking increased. But that was last year, the only time I ever met him.
Oh, so there was no meeting with him earlier this year?
I met him
Harare.
I met him once. And look, I'm tracked every place I go, so you can check that.
Fair enough, Ambassador.
There were others who said that John Moyo was running into the U.S. Embassy and...
Jonathan Moyo.
Yeah, none of this was true, please.
In your message, Ambassador, to the new president, you pledged to support Zimbabwe on key areas. You've already alluded to that: economic recovery and democracy. Can you maybe just break it down, those two elements for us briefly? Economically, what is your intended contribution to Zimbabwe? Well,
first of all, we have to see what the budget is in that speech next week. I don't know whether Acting Minister Chinamasa will deliver it or others. But we have been on record for several years supporting the Lima reform policy and package. We continue to support that, should that be President Mnangagwa's goal. Minister Chinamasa has been on record as supporting indigenous, getting the indigenization bill correct. If he does that, we will clearly support that, because that would bring not only American but foreign direct investment and STEM capital flight.
Are we likely to see balanced partnerships? Because the West is usually criticized for creating exploitative relationships with African countries.
I think that's neo-colonial language. Zimbabwe has a trade surplus with the United States. So clearly I'm not doing enough of my job to get more American products sold here. You sell more more Zimbabwean products to the United States. So I want to reverse that, but you have a trade balance surplus with the United States.
So we're likely to see the growing of trade between the Zimbabwe and the US?
Again, we'd like to see that, but the economic conditions are right. The economic conditions have to be right.
And on democracy, Ambassador, what does that entail?
Well, you know what? There's no one kind of democracy. There's no American democracy, only British democracy. What we would like to see is Zimbabwean democracy. And you and your fellow citizens are in full support of the 2013 Constitution. So that is your Constitution. You implement it as you choose. It's not for us to be prescriptive.
Yes, because I like what you're saying, because some in Africa feel that you're always trying to impose your model of democracy to the developing world, and yet it fundamentally really differs from country to country.
And we 100% agree, 100% agree.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. And then moving on, Ambassador, America has a military base in Botswana. What is the purpose of that?
A military base in Botswana?
Yes.
Well, I don't know that. So
it does have a military base.
We have a military base in Botswana?
Yes, you do.
I have no idea. That's a shock to me. What kind of base do we have? Please tell me where it is and what its function is.
It's in Haveron.
We have a military base?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know about that.
I'm sure you'll find out after this interview.
Are you sure?
Yes.
What is that military base and what does it do?
I was hoping you would enlighten us.
I don't know that. I don't know of us having any military bases in Southern Africa. We have trained with South African troops, Botswanan troops, with Malawian troops. That's what I know about, but a base, I've never heard of that.
Do you have a base anywhere in Africa, though?
Yes. And we have Joint Task Force Horn of Africa in Djibouti, sure.
Okay. So you are not aware of the existence of a similar base in Southern Africa?
No. Training, yes. Where our troops train with South African troops, with Botswana, with Malawian troops, and they go to the United States and train. But a base, I don't know about that.
In 2001, Ambassador, America imposed sanctions on Zimbabwe. Do you believe these were justified?
Well, it's not what I believe. It's what my president does, what our Congress does, because we too are a democracy. So our president, Zadera, was imposed. It was kept by subsequent presidents as well as Congress. It's my job to implement our laws and regulations.
And those sanctions impacted negatively on ordinary Zimbabweans.
Okay, in what way?
Was that the objective?
In what
Social
way?
Services collapsed. There was hyperinflation,
So you're saying that's
unemployment,
because
food shortages.
you know, I vehemently disagree with that. First of all, when Zimbabwe did not get access to IMF and World Bank loans, that started in 1999 when Zimbabwe failed to pay back their loans. And that would happen with anybody, any country or any business if you failed to pay back your loans. Hyperinflation, that was economic mismanagement. Let's be clear. That had nothing to do with the United States or other countries. If you want to talk about stores, lack of prescriptions, again, we're the largest donor in terms of PEPFAR in helping with malaria and tuberculosis, with anthrax. We are the largest in helping. But there's been massive corruption. Let's be real. Let's be real. There was massive corruption in the previous government. We would hope that would not take place in the current government. When a minister is more important than a business person, that is not good anywhere in the world. So to blame the United States or the West on massive corruption, on the fact that there are no dollars in the ATMs, when I see people driving around in cars that I only wish that I could have, living lifestyles that I only wish that I could have, that's easy way out. Now, is the United States perfect? No. Do we make mistakes? Yes. And when we do, we acknowledge them. I'd like to see that from Zimbabwe.
Fair enough, Ambassador. Maybe moving on, still on the issue on sanctions. There's some that felt the issue was really bilateral between Zimbabwe and Britain, and America did not need to get involved. What do you say?
I think we have to respect the decisions of our president, of our Congress, and as the international community, because clearly those sanctions were European Union, as well as the United States, Australia, Canada. So that is a large swath of the world.
Are we likely to see that law being scrapped?
That's up to our Senate and Congress and the President of the United States. I think they will act on performance. Look, we would love to see that removed. And if there are free and fair elections, if the Electoral Commission is free, if there's true human rights, if there's freedom in social media, if people aren't arrested for tweeting.
And finally, Ambassador, observers are saying the current US president has ushered another era of white supremacy, prompting movements like Black Lives Matter, for example. We've also seen the rise in right-wing extremism in America. In your view, is there reason to worry?
Well, Black Lives Matter existed
during the Obama time.
Yes,
I know that.
Yes, it did.
But then it's more active now than it was then.
Well, I think the most important thing is that I'm sitting here as a representative of my country. I'm an African American. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of my nation. I am very proud of the achievements that African Americans have made in my country, especially post-World War II, when my parents had to live in segregation, when I, even as a child traveling to the South, had to experience apartheid, the American version. To think that we would have had an African American president was just about as crazy as thinking that there would be a military intervention in Zimbabwe. So we always go forward with progress, and there are always challenges. And anybody who is racist, who is anti-gay, who violates freedom of speech, who holds violence, no matter where that person is and who that person is, should be condemned and fought.
Certainly, but where do you think this is going for America? Is the president, the current administration, able to address this issue?
Well,
effectively?
I pray so. Time will tell. The most important thing is polls. People go to elections free and fair and state their opinion, and we will see whom our people would like to represent themselves. But let me be clear. We as a black people in America have made tremendous progress. You would have never had us as CEOs of corporations, as stars of movies. You would have never seen us running education departments or cabinet departments, no matter our education. And you see that. So you can look as half empty or half full. But I know this, that my father, who had to walk through manure to register to vote after serving in World War II, could never imagine that his son would work in the White House under an African-American woman.
It's encouraging. What's your take, Ambassador, on President Trump?
Well,
He's
President
often
Trump,
derided in the Western media.
that's freedom of speech.
But do you believe, though, that the derision is sometimes deserved?
I think he's from Queens, just like I am.
So yes.
And Krishna and Monica Mashinga lived closer to him than I did. It's freedom of speech. You know, if somebody talks about you as a politician, you probably don't like it. But you don't retaliate.
You tweet on it.
Well, it's up to you. That's freedom of speech. Twitter is part of freedom of speech.
Certainly.
You know, and whenever you look at it, if you Google President Obama, look at the names he was called. He laughed it off. And that's what you should do.
Yeah, I guess maybe the difference this time is then the reaction on
Well,
the things that are
everybody
said
has
about him.
the great thing is everybody has the right to speak in a manner that they want to do, as long as they don't encourage violence. And you know what? At the end of the day, people here criticize me. I've been criticized in names I could never imagine in the Herald, you know. But you know, it's not by my family members. It's not by my mom or my dad or my sister. So I don't care.
Great stuff, Ambassador. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank
you for your time. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's always interesting.